1,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
Continue to follow the story we heard about at the end of the previous hour, and that was Amazon reportedly planning to cut as many as 30,000 corporate jobs beginning on Tuesday. Our senior economics correspondent Steve Leisman joins us with more.
Hey everybody, Sci-Fi Fan here, and it's been about a week now since Amazon announced that New World will no longer be getting any fresh content updates as the company looks to pivot away from MMOs altogether. Since that announcement, player count has plummeted on all platforms, and the New World developer team has announced that server merges will soon be taking place. Taken as a whole, the lack of prospects for the game has forced longtime New World players to make the difficult choice of whether to stay until the bitter end or choose a new MMO altogether. Today we'll be taking a look at their choices and even hear from a couple of New World refugees themselves on where they're taking their time and money. Before we do though, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already so you get notified when new MMO videos come out. With that out of the way, let's get into it.
The thing that really initially drew me is the action combat. I liked that a bit more, and then once I played it, things like the sound design, the simplicity in the game. A lot of MMOs have been out for a while. Like WoW is a titan of the industry, but in that time, it has become, in some ways, more complex and convoluted. I think that's why a lot of people like classic World of Warcraft, because it's a simpler game. And New World kind of fit that. It was a simpler game. I don't know, a casual MMO is what I would really classify it as. And you didn't have to do homework, in WoW. You have to do all these things every week just so you can go do the raid with your friends. And in New World, it was, hey, log on, you have some gear that you can grind for, but you don't have all this extra stuff you have to do. You could just log on, play, and have fun.
Jump into any online forum or Reddit thread about Amazon's New World, and you'll quickly find players expressing similar sentiments to those of Space Dad, a veteran MMO fan who's been adventuring online since EverQuest back in 1999. Whether it was the fluid action combat or the thrill of gathering countless resources scattered across Aeternum, New World offered a fresh and ambitious take on the genre. When it launched in 2020, the game drew massive attention from gamers across all backgrounds, reaching an incredible peak of over 913,000 concurrent players. But that excitement didn't last. A mix of game-breaking bugs, questionable management decisions, and a lack of compelling in-game content caused the player base to dwindle dramatically in the years that followed. Most of these missteps have already been dissected endlessly by other creators, but even so, many in the gaming community were caught off guard last week when Amazon officially announced the game's shutdown shortly after the Night Haven expansion brought thousands of former players back into the fold. Almost immediately upon announcement, the game's player count spiraled, going from more than 50,000 people playing on Steam alone to less than 8,000 players. One player I spoke with for this video, who goes by Alltail, said he was both surprised and saddened by the news, but he didn't waste time searching for a new virtual home. "I'm not usually one to wallow over stuff," he wrote to me. "I saw a lot of content creators starting to move on too, which makes total sense. It's their job and they basically just got told that they have a year left with the game. But that creates this cycle. As creators leave, there's less new content, and players who rely on that start drifting towards other games with more active communities. And here we are, New World's player count already down to around 7,000 on Steam. It's sad, man." With New World's sunset now officially on the horizon, players are faced with a question every MMO veteran eventually encounters. Where do we go to next? For some, it's an easy choice, a return to familiar worlds like Final Fantasy XIV, The Elder Scrolls Online, or World of Warcraft with its forthcoming Midnight expansion, bringing new gameplay mechanics and housing. These long-running MMOs have weathered countless waves of competition, offering stability and a steady stream of content that New World struggled to maintain. Meanwhile, more recent entries like Throne and Liberty, Blue Protocol, or even Ashes of Creation, whenever it finally launches, are drawing curious eyes from displaced New World fans eager to be part of the next big MMO moment. One name that keeps rising to the surface above the rest is Guild Wars 2. Perhaps more than any other MMO on the market, it embodies the kind of experience many New World players are searching for. An expansive world that rewards exploration, a dynamic combat system that feels alive, and a community that's managed to stay active and welcoming more than a decade after launch. Where New World offered a grounded frontier-style setting, Guild Wars 2 leans into high fantasy, with massive world events, diverse regions, and an art direction that still holds up beautifully today. Its horizontal progression system, where players aren't constantly chasing higher gear tiers, also resonates with those tired of the endless gear treadmill that defines so many MMOs. Instead, it encourages players to experiment, explore, and engage with the content at their own pace. For New World veterans used to gathering resources, crafting gear, and fending off enemies in a shared world, Guild Wars 2 offers a surprisingly similar rhythm, just framed in a more stylized universe. Dynamic events replace static questing, world bosses draw massive player gatherings, and the cooperative systems ensure that helping others always feels worthwhile. Perhaps most importantly, Guild Wars 2 has something New World never quite managed: stability. Its steady developer support, frequent quality of life updates, and a clear long-term vision have allowed it to maintain relevance, even as new MMOs come and go. For many displaced New World fans, it's less a step backward and more a rediscovery of what made MMOs great to begin with: a living world that rewards curiosity, collaboration, and community. So, what's the new MMO then that you're switching over to, and I guess have you already started playing it?
So I'm thinking of going over to, well, I probably will, Guild Wars 2. Mostly because I feel like while it is vastly different in a lot of ways, the thing that kind of draws me back to it is, I did play at launch 2012, and I played for a couple of years, and that gear that I have from 2012 is still relevant today. That character that I haven't touched in almost a decade is relevant. The only thing that's, I haven't done is all the new story stuff, and there's a lot of horizontal progression there, and I like that, like New World, it respects my time. I don't have a bunch of stuff that I need to do to be able to finally play the game.
Unfortunately, it's difficult to ascertain just how many people like Space Dad are coming from New World to Guild Wars 2. The game, like many MMOs, has its own launcher outside of Steam, which makes tracking player numbers difficult. A new expansion, Visions of Eternity, also released on October 28th, just a day prior to the announcement of Amazon's layoffs, further muddying the numbers. One thing is for certain though, New World's player exodus certainly hasn't hurt Guild Wars 2. For the first time since being released on Steam in 2022, the game breached more than 10,000 players. Another name that is also topping people's replacement list appears to be Where Winds Meet, a game that I honestly had not heard about until this last week. Developed by Everstone Studio and published by NetEase Games, the upcoming open-world action RPG is set in 10th century China during the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period. Like New World, Where Winds Meet emphasizes skill-based combat and freeform exploration, offering players the freedom to define their own playstyles. You can charge into sword duels, glide across rivers, or scale mountain peaks using your martial abilities, all without being confined to a rigid class system. This flexibility, paired with the game's lush landscapes and historical flavor, has many New World veterans saying it could capture the same sense of discovery that made Aeternum so compelling in its early days. What's especially interesting is how Where Winds Meet blends traditional MMO elements with single-player storytelling. Players can explore alone, tackle co-op challenges, or interact in shared online hubs, which blurs the line between a story-driven RPG and a living online world. The combat, which is described by early testers as fluid and cinematic, leans into fast reflexes and weapon mastery, a welcome change for those who enjoy New World's hands-on approach to battle. Still, there's a cautious optimism surrounding it. With New World's decline still fresh in players' minds, many are wary of whether Where Winds Meet can sustain long-term support, meaningful in-game content, and a fair monetization model. The game is slated for a global release next week, and its success may hinge on how well it balances those elements. But for now, it stands as one of the most talked about landing spots for players seeking a new home, a place that promises both fresh horizons and a familiar sense of adventure. While some players are gravitating toward the polished stability of Guild Wars 2 or the fresh promise of Where Winds Meet, others, like Alltale, the New World player I spoke with earlier, are setting their sights on console-friendly games like Throne and Liberty. Usually I've played MMOs on my PC, Alltale wrote to me, but I tried New World on console and I gotta say, mind blown. The game looks spectacular, and I discovered a controller feels way more comfortable for me. You know, laying on the couch and avoiding carpal tunnel. I found myself executing combos with ease, winning arena PvPs, and surprisingly, it handled all the key bindings I needed. So as you can tell, I'm now very adamant about being able to use a controller. That preference ended up shaping his next move. Now that I gave some contents, he said, let me explain my decision. Let's start with the big one, World of Warcraft. It has native controller support, which is great, but that's about it. He went on to tell me that he made a new character and it sent him to an island with some dragons, and he, quote, just felt like there wasn't any purpose to anything. Definitely didn't scratch the sandbox feel, it was more theme park, he said. Then there's the skill system, just so cluttered. Before I even finished that starting zone, I already had an action bar full of abilities that didn't synergize. It just felt pointless. For players like Alltale, Throne and Liberty seems like a logical next step. Built with cross-platform support and controller play in mind, the game promises large-scale PvP, open-world exploration, and an evolving ecosystem where weather and terrain can impact combat. It's the kind of immersive, reactive world that might rekindle some of that what New World once offered, just with more accessibility and modern comfort. And for many console players or those looking to ditch the keyboard grind, that accessibility could make all the difference. A few nights ago, I decided to log back into New World for the first time in months. The familiar hum of Everfall's town square greeted me. The sound of crafting stations, clinking anvils, and the faint clatter of players still trading goods. Out of curiosity, I opened the world chat and asked a simple question. So where's everyone heading after this? The responses came quickly. A handful of players mentioned Guild Wars 2, Throne and Liberty, or the upcoming Where Winds Meet. But the overwhelming majority said the same thing. They were staying until the very end. And really, it made perfect sense. At this point, the only people still logging in are the diehards, the ones who built companies, fought for territory, and poured thousands of hours into crafting their corner of Aeternum. For them, this isn't just a game winding down, it's a home that they helped build slowly disappearing. After lingering in Everfall for a while, I made my way down one of the winding roads that lead to the beaches, the same ones that every player's journey begins. The place was eerily quiet. No new adventurers stumbling through tutorials, no shouts for help with wolves or crafting mats, just the gentle sound of the waves and the occasional grunt of low-level boars wandering the shore, waiting for players who would never arrive. Whether it was because of the hour I logged in or the news of the game's end, the beach felt empty, like a world already starting to fade away. Standing there on that quiet beach, it struck me just how strange it is to witness an online world in its twilight. MMOs have always been living things, fueled by the players who inhabit them, shaped by their choices, and sustained by their stories. When the players leave, it's not just servers that go dark, it's entire histories, friendships, and moments that existed nowhere else. For all of its flaws, New World managed to create something special, a sense of place that felt tangible, a world that rewarded curiosity and camaraderie in equal measure, and even as its population dwindles, that spark remains alive in those who refuse to leave, choosing instead to see the journey through to its end. As I watched the waves roll onto the empty shore, I realized that every MMO eventually reaches this point. Not just an ending, but a kind of passing. Worlds fade, but what they give us doesn't. The people we met, the battles we fought, the late-night chats in towns like Everfall, those moments persist, even after the servers shut down. And maybe that's the real magic of games like New World. They remind us that worlds we build together never truly disappear. They just live on, somewhere else, in the next adventure, the next login, or even the next digital frontier that we decide to call home.